Beyoncé's recent album, Cowboy Carter, is a country album that features a song called Levi's Jeans, which likely explains her collaboration with Levi's. However, she is facing significant backlash over her Levi's ad, particularly for scenes where she removes her jeans and walks around a laundromat in her underwear in front of two young girls. This has sparked considerable debate, and I completely understand the criticism. Let's take a look at the ad. Seriously, it's bizarre when celebrities like Beyoncé are used to endorse everyday products like Levi's. I mean, come on. Do we really believe she's spending her days in laundromats, let alone wearing Levi's? And what is up with putting a bucket of diamonds in the washing machine? I mean, come on. If I had a bucket of diamonds, I would own my own washer and dryer. Beyoncé is usually decked out in designer brands, so this whole campaign feels so off. It's just odd seeing a superstar, who's probably not stepped foot in a laundromat since her early career days, stripping down in such a setting. And honestly, if this were happening in real life, with someone undressing in a laundromat, wouldn't it make anyone uncomfortable? Especially around young girls? Those two young girls seem to be around 12 years old. It is very inappropriate to me. Her daughter is 12 years old. She is sending a terrible message to her daughter. What kind of message is this supposed to really send to consumers? Levi's has been around for decades. They don't need this kind of gimmick to stay relevant. It all just feels like a weird attempt to force some kind of connection that just doesn't make sense. When it comes to the kids in the scenario, that's where things get trickier. If the ad involves Beyoncé stripping down in a public space, like a laundromat with young girls present, it does raise questions about the message being sent. It can feel a bit inappropriate or tone-deaf, especially considering how protective parents can be about the influences their kids are exposed to. While brands aim for attention and buzz, they should be mindful of the context. There's a line between pushing boundaries for creativity and making people uncomfortable, especially in a family-friendly setting. If the ad was framed differently or without that element, it could still convey the aspirational vibe they're aiming for, without raising eyebrows over what's happening around the kids. When kids are involved, it adds a whole layer of responsibility to how a brand presents its message. I mean, having young girls in a setting where someone, even Beyoncé, is stripping down in a public place like a laundromat feels a bit off. It makes you wonder what kind of example it's setting. Kids are impressionable, and seeing something like that, even in an ad, might send confusing signals about what's appropriate behavior in public spaces. It's one thing to push creative boundaries for adult audiences, but when kids are in the picture, brands need to think carefully about the imagery and the context. The focus should be on empowering messages, especially for young girls, without introducing elements that might make parents uncomfortable or raise questions about what's normal in everyday life. It's about striking a balance between creativity and social responsibility. And in this case, the balance seems a little off. It's almost like brands think slapping a celebrity's face on anything will make us buy it, no matter how ridiculous the pairing is. Are we seriously supposed to believe she's kicking back in a laundromat, folding jeans like the rest of us? Come on. She's more likely strutting down a runway in couture than wearing anything off the rack. And stripping down in that setting? It's just plain weird. Imagine if this were real life. Wouldn't we all be a little concerned if someone started doing that around our kids? It just feels out of touch. Levi's has been iconic for decades. They don't need to reach this hard to stay in the game. A high-profile celebrity like Beyoncé endorsing something she clearly doesn't live by just comes off as disconnected from reality. These marketing stunts just get weirder and weirder. Beyoncé for Levi's? Let's be real. When was the last time anyone saw her in anything less than custom designer outfits? Putting her in a laundromat like she's just one of us, folding jeans and casually stripping down. Who thought that was relatable? It feels forced and honestly a little uncomfortable. Can you imagine if that was happening in real life? Someone stripping in a public place like that with kids around? No one would be okay with it. Levi's has been a staple for years. They don't need this kind of over-the-top gimmick to sell jeans. Sometimes it just feels like brands are trying too hard to be edgy or relevant, and it ends up making no sense at all. Beyoncé, you also need to be more thoughtful of what you do. You are coming across as a bit desperate. Maybe it is because of what is going on with Diddy, and your husband is getting some backlash. Moreover, you haven't publicly spoken up against Diddy's arrest on trafficking people and other slew of criminal activities. From a different perspective, honestly, I kind of get it. Beyoncé is a global icon, and her name alone generates buzz. Sure, maybe she's not hanging out in laundromats folding Levi's, but that's not really the point. It's about connecting with people on a deeper, aspirational level. Levi's is trying to blend their long-standing, everyday appeal to someone who represents success and confidence. It's not about whether Beyoncé actually wears Levi's every day. It's about aligning their brand with the idea of empowerment and cultural influence. And maybe the laundromat setting is meant to evoke something nostalgic or relatable, like grounding a superstar in everyday life. People know it's a stretch, but they're selling a vibe, not reality. If it gets people talking, maybe it's working after all. Look, I see what Levi's is going for with Beyoncé. It's not about whether she's actually wearing their jeans in her daily life. It's about the symbolism. Beyoncé represents strength, independence, and cultural power, and Levi's is trying to tap into that energy. The laundromat? Maybe it's meant to contrast her superstar status with something more grounded, making her seem more approachable, or showing that even icons can connect to everyday spaces. It's not like anyone really thinks she's doing laundry there. It's more about the vibe, the message of you can be glamorous and still connected to your roots. Sure, it's a bit of a stretch, but brands do this all the time. They're selling a lifestyle, not a literal image. It's all about creating a sense of inclusivity, like even Beyoncé can be part of your world, and by extension, so can Levi's. If people see their favorite singer in something affordable, that would make them want to purchase it too. It's possible to showcase strength and confidence without crossing into questionable territory, and this ad feels like it could have done that in a more thoughtful way. Brands need to think about how their messaging is received by all audiences, especially when it involves kids. I really think Beyoncé and Levi could have just done the ad without the two young girls. That would have made more sense. Final thoughts here, guys. Beyoncé is not even promoting her own new album. She didn't make music videos for her last two albums. She is instead busy doing a bunch of side projects like perfume, hair care, whiskey, and now Levi's clothing. She is coming off as a capitalist. Or maybe she is going broke and in need of more money.